everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Creative Mountain Mama podcast. This week, I am joined by Brianna from the Honey and Nectar Co. I am really excited about our conversation. If you've been interested in homesteading at all, we're going to talk a lot about how to get started. She also talks on her page a little bit about Jesus and gardening as well. Thank you for joining me, Brianna.
Yes, thank you. I am so happy to be here.
I appreciate your time. Is there anything new?
Yes, it's been like a crazy week here, but um, just in general, but it always is like on a farm or anything, I feel like at least. But this week I never get professional photos taken of me like ever. And I was like, it's about time, to do that for my business. And we have more of like a hobby farm at the moment. We don't have the space for much more. And I was out in the field we got just really cute. They look really innocent animals. We have a little horse and a mini mule, and we were out there taking pictures. We got maybe like four before they started. Like the mule, they constantly are like changing their emotions like all the time. And 1 second they're like taking cute pictures with me, and then the next they're like charging at me. Like I think maybe 5 or 6 times, and I was dressed like super nice for the occasion. And I was like on a tree stump, and he was like just running around me in circles, like for like 10 minutes maybe, as I was like yelling at my dog, like, stop barking. And it was like, a great reminder of what it's like to be like on a homestead or a farm, because they are constantly like, it was like I was on this stump in this long dress, and I was like scaling the fences to get away from it. It was like absolutely insane.
You grew up on a farm. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I grew up on like a real deal farm. So, like I said, now our farm side of things with the animals is super like hobby farm now. But I grew up on a pretty large farm. We had just like 13 to 15 acres, but we did just about everything you could think of. We had sheep and horses, and we had goats, and we had pigs and sheep. I can't remember if I said that. We had a garden, and sometimes we took this to market. We did starts for market, and it was pretty real deal. And we sold we had like a lot of lambs. So that was our biggest thing. We did lambs in a garden, and we were able, it was such a good experience. We had this farm basically the whole time that I grew up, and it was an experience that I wish everyone could have, to be able to grow up in that kind of a setting with around like nature and living animals and creatures, and not just, I know it's like so different to how a lot of us grew up today, but I'm so thankful for that experience. It teaches you so many lessons, and it's just so fun to be involved in something like that. It was a great childhood. It was a hard, like we were able to learn lots of skills, to work hard, and of course it's just fun to be around cute little lambs and cows and things like that as well. So it was great.
I'm so glad you said that. I was wondering if there are any early memories you have of cute little animals and
Yeah.
running around the farm.
Yeah, I definitely I mean, my favorites were probably with the lambs, because they're like the cutest. We had like some pretty fun like experiences with all of the animals that we raised, but the lambs were of course the cutest and the most fluffy and fun. And I'd say like my favorite memories with them was we bottle fed a lot of them. And so that was a lot of like late nights, early mornings, like 12 a.m., headed outside, make sure there's like no cougars in the dark or anything, and you're running to the shed, and you just get like surrounded by like 30 little lambs. And we all like had our hands full of bottles, and they just sit on your laps. And it was like, I'd say that was like maybe my favorite thing. It's not always fun to wake up at like 12 a.m. and go outside in the freezing cold, but once you got into the shed and they're all like surrounding you, and that was like one of my favorite things was always the little lambs or little pigs. And we had some pigs that were actually really friendly, and we did giant pigs. I don't even know what the name is anymore, but when we were younger, we could ride them. And so we had a pig that was like, I think that it had been showed earlier in its life. And so it was very, very kind, very tame, and we were able to ride it around. And so there's a lot of fun memories that we have, all of us kids, but those are two of my favorites, was the all the little lambs, the bottle babies, and the bottle baby calves that we did as well. And just getting to raise these animals, and then they almost become tame like a dog or a cat. And I had one sheep that just passed away last year, and she was my bottle baby that I had when I was like 12. And so she was like a dog. She would follow us around, and was pretty spoiled. And so yeah, there's so many great memories that I think everyone I've ever chatted with that grew up on a farm, I think we all have some great experiences in there. And it's always fun to be raised around animals, I think. So, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about how that background has informed your lifestyle today?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it has everything to do with what I do today. I think because for a while I had left like the farming, kind of like what we call like the homesteading or country lifestyle. Um, and I just got a regular job outside of high school. And I did a few different things. I worked at like a bronze factory, and I worked at a child care, and a few other random things. And I just it just feels so different. It feels um like the way that I feel like I could best explain it is I felt like less purposeful there in those places, if that makes sense. And less connected with creation, and less connected with um the Lord, because I felt like I was disconnected from life and disconnected from watching things grow, from seed, and watching flowers bloom, and getting to be around these babies and raise these baby lambs and things like that. And same with chickens is a big one that we did as well. And they're so cute when they're little, and watching them grow. And it felt like there was such a disconnect from creation, and even from the Lord at times, because it feels like when I was in my 9 to 5, a lot more, there was just so much routine, and it didn't leave a lot of room for those things anymore. And so after a couple of years of that, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And what was coming back to me was the way that I felt when I was growing up and making my own food and raising our animals and doing gardening and things like that as well. And so I really, that I think it pretty much informed everything that I do now, because I think because I left the lifestyle for a couple of years, and just being able to recall those memories and how it makes you feel, and the way that I felt so different when I was being raised in this environment versus when I left it. So yeah, I think it really was the foundation for everything that I do now, which I'm so thankful for that.
Can you walk me through what exactly that is and what your operation looks like today?
Yeah, so it's definitely a lot smaller than what it was when I was growing up. It's primarily me now. And so when I grew up, it was a family operation, and they had a garden and orchard and animals, everything like that. And we moved from that scenario, and I'm the only one so far that's really picked back up on it. So it's a lot smaller. It's scaled back quite a bit. But we have chickens still. We do have hobby farm animals, like I said, like the horse. We have 2 horses and a mule right now, and they're just for fun. But I do a lot more of like in the home things. And that's a lot of what I teach is like, um, basically my primary thing is for people that are starting, like where can they start? And I always say start in the kitchen. And so that's a lot of what I teach now is starting in the kitchen. What can you do to begin to make your own food from scratch, bake from scratch, can food? And a lot of that goes hand in hand with what I've picked back up, which is gardening. And I garden for myself, I garden for my business online, and I garden for market. And so I do take things to market in the summer. Whenever I'm talking to someone that is starting like at the very basic, have no like idea how to get into homesteading or even what that looks like, I always encourage like start with those sorts of things. They're often more familiar with the kitchen and often more familiar with growing indoor plants. And so those are the places that I start with when it gets into like animals and things like that and outdoor gardening. I always recommend well, I started pretty big with my garden. And so if someone is willing to start like pretty big, I'm like, go ahead, experiment, try whatever the heck you want, like really get into it, plant as many things as you want to plant. And along the way, you can learn what works and what doesn't. And that's like how I got into doing it on my own, was just more of approaching it as like experimental and fun and not having a lot of like weight on it needing to provide for me
Mhm.
or anything along those lines. It was more just to learn. Um, and so if someone is willing to do that, I'm like, do it. But for those that are like kind of wanting a foundation, but a lot of what I had do on my farm now is going to be like in the garden or in the kitchen. And a lot of that has to do with like my location and also my business and how it's geared, like who it's geared towards, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I would assume it's geared towards people that have no background. They weren't raised on
Yeah.
farm. How would
Yes.
you tell someone to get started that wants to get into
Right.
raising animals?
For animals, I always would say chickens is like the best place to start. And starting with a small flock, I say like start with hens, especially like if you get a rooster, you can easily rehome them generally. And oftentimes, if you buy them from the store, they're already separated by gender. And so I think like that's like the easiest place to start when you're starting with animals would be chickens. They're extremely low maintenance and they they're also just fun. It gives you a great experience, especially when you get them as chicks. It's like it's a great it's kind of like what I was talking about with the having the baby lambs and things like that. It creates like a great experience and yet one that's not burdensome and one that doesn't require a lot of funds as well. That's a big thing that I try to share is like ways that people can save money and also learn self sustainability and learn how to homestead and learn more about like country living and farming is how can you do it in cheap ways? And so chickens is a great way, especially if you have a small flock, you don't need a large coop. A lot of the time you can buy like pre-built ones from the store for like $150. And so that's a really, really great place to start. Chicken feed isn't overly expensive and you get a great return to be able to get eggs and use like a farm fresh item that you helped raise is so encouraging and so refreshing. And so that's where I always encourage people to start when it comes to animals and gardening. I always, if it's someone that's starting small, I say start with like 5 plants, like 5 different varieties, like tomatoes, a pepper plant, maybe some herbs and some greens. And that gives you a beautiful variety of plants to harvest at different times throughout the summer. But it's very manageable, very inexpensive. And purchasing starts over starting seeds is also a great way to start. It really sets you up for more success than if you are starting from scratch and trying to grow from seed. So I know that's a lot of information, but I think that's like generally where I try to have people land when they're starting from scratch with farming and gardening.
As far as making money, I know you break down a lot of ways to save money. Can you
Right.
explain coming to market and how you can make a profit off of your homestead?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. I feel like a lot of the time people are really intimidated by starting a farm or garden or going to market because of the expenses and feeling like overwhelmed with like oftentimes it's a really different environment than we're used to in other places that like settings like work settings and things like that. It's very different. And so I definitely chat with a lot of people who are like, what do I, it feels overwhelming or it feels so new and so different. And so I have a lot of tips that have to do with, how can you do it inexpensively, and also tips for communication skills. And also in general, there's so many things we don't even think about. Like my one of my very first things I always tell anyone when they are uh, wanting to join their farmers market or even just open a farm stand or sell on Facebook Marketplace and things like that is to make sure that you know your state laws. That is like always my biggest thing, because a lot of states have like the strangest laws about what you can sell from your farm or your garden. And like from where I live, I can sell butchered chickens for like meat chickens, and I did that for a long time. But I can't sell their eggs without like a licensed kitchen, which is totally crazy. I could sell the chickens without a licensed kitchen, but I have to have a licensed kitchen for the eggs. So it is the most random things that you wouldn't even think of, like a sourdough starter. Some states you can't sell sourdough starter, even, like if it's dehydrated or not, you can't sell it, and can't sell fermented things like kombucha. And so really make sure that you know that you are stepping into this, doing it legally, and that you have the credentials that you need to sell what you want at market. And it's not impossible to sell these things. Getting a licensed kitchen is not as intimidating or hard as it often looks. I don't currently have one where I live because I don't need one for what I do. But I have in the past, and it is really a simple process depending on where you live. But that is definitely the first thing that I would encourage everyone to do is make sure that they know what they can and can't sell, legally speaking. And then the second thing is I always encourage filling your booth with secondhand goods, that you're set up with secondhand goods. So for me, that means like apple boxes and baskets that I bought secondhand. I never buy anything for my booth that is like purchased right from the store. I always buy secondhand, or I always salvage goods and all those sorts of things, anything like that that I can think of. Because the thing that we want is we're going to market to make money, and we're going to market to find a new way to earn income, especially oftentimes doing what we really love. And that can be hard with farming lately to make a good income off of it. And so if there's ways that you can cut costs, I always recommend find ways that you can cut costs. And so another one, if you do starts in your garden, I always sell mine out of tin cans and other recycled goods. That costs me no extra money at all. And so along those lines, I always encourage people to learn to compost, because that way you never have to buy potting soil ever again. So there's a lot of things along those lines. That's ways to save money. Make sure that you're doing it legally. And I also really encourage people to get to know the people that run their market and the people that are in their market as well. This is like going to really help you understand like the culture of your farmer's market, who runs it, so that you are able to learn so much more about the operation when you are in contact with the people that run it. And when you are going to the meetings and the symposiums that they put on, oftentimes like once a year before market. A lot of markets put on symposiums for the vendors. And so I always recommend if they send an email out, read it, reply to it, chat with the people in charge, and get to know the people that are in market with you, especially if they've been there a long time. They're going to have amazing tips. One of my favorite gals that's a part of my market encouraged all of us to write out our story so that when we feel like we're having trouble communicating, and I often feel like I have trouble communicating, I am able to just give them this story and be like, hey, if you want to learn more about my farm, this is my paper. And that way my words are on the paper. I don't have to worry about like stumbling over my words. And so getting to know the people in your market, they're going to have wisdom for you that no one else is going to have, that because they're not a part of your market. They're not a part of, and especially for such a long time. So I really encourage that as well. Get to know these people. And lastly, I really say just do your research on how you want your booth to be set up, as well as what's the pricing generally in your area for these things. And is there a way to make your produce or your crafted like goods or your baked goods, is there a way to make them stick out? And is that maybe by cutting costs so that you can have lower pricing than other people, or is it a part of your story? So for me, I'm able to market my produce is not just local, but it's non-certified organic, and you can oftentimes label yourself as non-certified organic. But even people just knowing, oh, she's not certified, but she is organic, and or pesticide chemical free, and things along those lines. I also do a lot of regenerative gardening, so the earth is not as disturbed and disrupted in the way that I approach gardening. And oftentimes I'm giving back to it with compost and things like that. And so it's really giving back to the local environment, as in nature, a lot more than from the produce you'll get like from the store and things like that. And so there's a lot of ways that you can market your products and your brand and your produce and your farm that are going to encourage others to be interested in it and to come back for more because you have a story behind it, and because you're trying to cut costs, or even if you can't cut costs, your story and your produce and your crafted goods are going to be much more valuable because of your story and because of what you do and the time and energy you put into what you're selling. And so those are a couple of tips that I would give someone who is just starting with market.
So good, Brianna. You are clearly a wealth of knowledge, and I feel this is just the tip of the iceberg. If someone were to want to learn more from you, where are a couple places you would direct them?
Yeah, I have Instagram is my primary the primary place that I post lately, and that's at the Honey and Nectar Co. That's my username. I also have a website that I post on about once a week, just honeyandnectarco.com, and I try to do a blog post that's really extensive. I have a separate amount of blog posts and things like that that are for subscribers, and they are the ones that go really in depth with the market and growing regeneratively and things like that, if you're really interested in those things. And I did just start a YouTube channel, and you were the one that encouraged me to do that, and it's going to be at the same handle as my Instagram. That's where you can find me at any platform. I have Pinterest as well and different things like that. And so it's the Honey and Nectar Co. And that's where I mostly share my stuff, is social media. But if you really want in depth, you can definitely find me at my blog and now at my YouTube channel.
Yay!
Yeah, I know. So
thank you so much for your time, Brianna. I really appreciate you hopping on.
yes, thank you so much.